Welcome back to Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned, the podcast where a soulful strategy meets bold leadership. Today, I'm joined by someone who embodies what it means to rise from the ashes and lead with purpose. Andrea Crisp is an intuitive empowerment coach, podcaster, author of Designed with Purpose, and a catalyst for creatives and entrepreneurs who are ready to stop hiding and start thriving. With over 20 years of experience as an educator, musician, and pastor, Andrea's story is one of deep personal awakening. From being let go from her dream job to overcoming anxiety and financial hardship to stepping fully into her mission of helping others live boldly and authentically. If you've ever felt like it's too late to start again, or questioned whether your voice matters, this conversation will feel like coming home. Welcome, Andrea Crisp. I am beyond filled with joy to have you here today, Andrea. Thank you.
I'm glad to be here. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you. And there's so many places we could go with this conversation. So let's start with your journey has included so many profound pivots from music and ministry to coaching and podcasting. What was the moment that really cracked you open and had you step into life in a different way?
Oh, wow. I feel like that is a really big question,
It's big.
Laurie.
We go big here first.
The moment that cracked me open,
Mm.
I would have to say it was probably when I realized that my worst fear had happened.
Hmm.
That was the moment that cracked me open.
And what about that moment had you look at things differently?
I think it was this realization that I actually was surviving it,
Mhm,
and it was okay, and it was something that was giving me a new outlook on my life, a new outlook on, how I could approach things in my life,
mhm,
and that it wasn't as scary probably as I thought it
mhm,
was when I had it in my head
mhm.
for many years. Yeah.
I think it's such an interesting part of fear is we can convince ourselves that the worst thing is going to happen and we're not going to survive it. So it's interesting for you to say that's actually the moment that you walked through to
Yeah.
create all the magic you're creating today, which is profound if people can kind of take that in. I love your perspectives on looking at sort of failure, rejection, and loss, and just they're all part of the journey. So, can you maybe walk us through just a bit of your personal story and how that has shaped you?
Mhm. Sure. I think, really going back to like the question you asked and, how did it inform,
Mhm,
who I am and who I'm becoming in that sense is really I think this moment that I had always wanted to prove to everyone that I was more than maybe what they thought I was going to be.
mm,
And so I had this fear that my worst case scenario would be that everything would fall apart, that I wouldn't have anything that I wanted happen, and I would end up having to move home with my parents and live in their basement.
mhm,
And that happened twice.
mhm,
So not only did it happen one time, but it happened a second time. And I think that for me, it was this loss of identity. It was a loss of community that I had built in different places in my life. When I had moved back home, I had moved home from different places. So the first time I moved home was because I had lost my working visa in the US. And so
Mm,
I had 6 weeks to move home. And so I had no other choice but to move in with my parents because it was so fast, and I didn't have um a an Ontario teaching certification, so I couldn't teach, which was what I was doing at the time. And so I immediately found myself living in their basement and not being able to work. My car couldn't be on the road because I didn't have a title in Ontario. It was this whole big thing, right? So
mhm,
this huge loss of identity
mhm,
and huge loss of, all I had worked for.
mm,
And now looking back at, my perspective, like it was always to be like, well, I just want to be approved of. I want to be validated. I want my life to mean something. But I was always doing it so that I would get the approval, not so that I could have the journey of it.
mm,
And so when it my worst case scenario happened and I had to move home, it really started it was like the catalyst to the healing. And I didn't really heal until probably a decade later when it happened a second time.
mm.
So I really didn't learn the lessons the first
Right.
time.
Well, that makes me think about this whole journey of healing
Mhm.
because it's talked about so much, and I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about this, like, what's healing?
Yeah.
Um, what do you believe some of those misunderstandings are, especially having gone through that
Mhm.
and seeing it come back around again? What do you think that we misunderstand about healing, and what were you able to come to so that the second time, it wasn't
Mhm.
gonna happen a third time?
Right, right. And that's the thing too. I think w so often, myself included, but other women that I know, they say that they want something to change and to heal in order to get something.
Mhm,
So, it's to be on the receiving end of what they desire.
mhm,
And when it's to be on the receiving end of something, it's really not healing. It's just, smoothing something over so that you can have what you perceive you want, which in most cases you really don't want anyways. You just think you want it. So for me, it was, if I, heal, then I'm going to be able to move back out and take care of myself and have the life I want to live. But the real healing was the acknowledgement that uh, there had been traumatic experiences, that I had made mistakes, and I had to show myself compassion, and that I had to move through anxiety, depression, and have healing for those things in my life. So there were so many things where I just wanted to smooth over and just like, let's keep on moving through so that everyone else can see that my life is great.
mhm,
Going back to the original thing, which is, if I show you this perfect visual of who I am, because I was always very put together and the way I presented was like, everything's fine, everything's great.
mhm,
And really, I felt like I was like a crumbling heap.
mm,
So the healing for me was a lot of vulnerability and a lot of like exposure to this is who I really am.
mhm,
And I'm not going to show you any pretenses. Whereas I had lived for so long, let me show you the best part of me.
mhm. I think it's
And
so
yeah.
easy to fall into that trap, though, because I can't believe how many times, we look at social media even as an example, right? And people will say to me, "Well, you don't understand because you've clearly got it all figured out." It's like, "Whoa, whoa, time out.
Yeah.
I have never said that. That is not a truth. Just
Yep.
because you see something appear to you and in your mind you perceive that other person has success, has it all figured out. And so I think our world just sort of breeds that perpetuation of, well, if that's what they're seeing and that's what they're looking for, then, I've got to stay to that standard. And
Mhm.
so, breaking apart which I love that we're having this conversation to hopefully guide that, breaking apart that high achievement, high performance, that's all that matters.
Mhm.
Let people see that. I mean, let people see you and really
Absolutely.
learn. I think what you're saying is the embodiment of things. So, you work with a lot of creatives and entrepreneurs and you guide them to kind of look at that pressure of performance versus really embodying who they are in the journey. And what are some of the things that help you guide your clients through that even?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up, like, a lot of the women that I have worked with and men as well in the past. I don't always work with men, but, I often work with male performers.
Oh,
And
actual performers, like
yeah, like
that makes sense with your background.
yes, and
Yeah.
so, a lot of it's been female entrepreneurs and male artists
Mhm.
has been how
It's
it I know it's very interesting, and I think it's because they're in touch with the fact that they have to have that vulnerability.
Mm,
And so they are drawn to working with me when it comes to that because in order for them to show up as an artist or for them to make music or do the things that they're doing, there's this level of vulnerability, but there's also then this like feeling of I'm going to be exposed, right? And
mhm,
so I've often thought for myself, and I think this is one of the things I love to talk with my clients about is really that it's not about manifesting all of these beautiful things. I mean, it's great to have things and but it's really about being content and being okay and at peace and at home with yourself
mhm,
because you can have all of the things in the world and you would still feel like you're missing something because you're missing a part of yourself. So it's really can we get to that place
mm.
where they
Oh,
are
I'll be
content?
happy when,
Yes.
right?
I'll be happy when I'll be worth something
When.
when I'll be validated when, approved of. My worthiness is always contingent on, do I have this?
Mhm,
Am I showing up as that? And I think that it's this like perpetual chasing. It's
mm,
constantly like chasing after the next thing, the bigger thing, and all of these people are high achievers in whatever they do.
mhm,
They're creative, they're ultra creative, they're tapped in to their emotions sometimes so much so that it's like overriding and sometimes not at all and so that they can't even access anything. So it's really about like can they be okay? Can they feel safe in who they are to express themselves, to show up and to live their potential?
mm,
And not just have things, but yes, I mean, obviously, like, they wanna have a good life. So, um, I think that's the important part, and I know that to be true from myself, so,
mm. Yeah,
yeah.
it's beautiful when you can align the work you do with the journey you've been on. I feel
Yeah.
like that is such a beautiful place, and listening to your journey and then hearing how you help other people, it's really just putting a hand back and saying, "I've walked this too. Allow me
Mhm.
to put my hand back and support you as you go on your own journey of doing that." I think that, the raising the consciousness of really humanity. Like, well,
Yeah.
let's go big, Andrea. Like, we're here to raise the
Right.
consciousness of humanity. But in working with your clients, there's that confidence piece, right? And
Mhm.
as we raise that consciousness that you're describing, it really does kind of support our journey out of this self-doubt. So play with us in that space of the self-doubt and what's kind of nagging at it and how we move away from self-doubt as we continue to evolve and embody a new identity. What does that look like?
Well, it's interesting that you say self-doubt because I think we all have that to a degree.
Mhm.
But it shows up in a different way, right? So when we are doubting our potential or doubting our worthiness or doubting that we have what it takes or that we can perform at the level that we want to perform at, then it's always this striving to either prove that we're worthy of it or prove that, we can have it, which is almost like it takes it um too far and it becomes too pushy.
Mm,
And on the other end of that spectrum is this I'm not going to show up at all.
mm,
And I'm not going to use my voice, or I'm just going to sit back and let people find me, or not express my truth, and so it's like it's this all or nothing type of thing.
mhm,
And I think it's important for us, when we're thinking about like moving out of that self-doubt, is realizing, number one, that we don't have to be perfect,
mm,
that things don't have to be perfect. When we're showing up authentically in alignment with who we are, that everything is just going to be as it needs to be. We're going to be positioned in the right places. We can trust ourselves to make those decisions. We can trust ourselves to connect to a higher power, to God, to source, universe, whatever, you know, you connect with, and know that it's okay to be where you are. It's
mhm,
okay to share who you are. You don't have to overshare it. It's like it's learning that balance between trying to push ourselves and hold ourselves back.
mm. I love that. You keep mentioning the word, whole, like feeling whole in self.
Mhm,
And you have a deep spiritual relationship. So how do people feel that? It's
mhm.
such a I know when you say, know yourself and
Yeah.
hear yourself. And I think so many of my listeners are like, I don't know who I am or how to hear my own voice even. And
Mhm,
I mean, I have such a belief we were born whole. You are whole as you are. We're
mhm,
not striving to become whole. You just are. And yet, that is not an easy place to sit for the world we live in today. So
mhm.
I'd love to hear how you navigate that and what your perspective is.
So this might go a little deeper than what you're
Mhm.
asking me, but I'll go there anyways because I know you. So I grew up in Christianity in an evangelical um context. So for me, when I was growing up, it was really all about, allowing Jesus to save you and
Mm,
to make you better. And so I grew up with this belief that there was innately something wrong with me.
mm,
And so many people, whether they're in a faith context or not, have that belief there is something wrong with them.
mhm,
They need to be saved from themselves. They need to be saved to something else. And and then it becomes this like constant striving to be better, to be less of a sinner, to be more of a saint, to be more, whatever the terms are, right?
mhm,
So for me, when I had a massive faith deconstruction, um, probably over 5 years ago now, but I started to really have to ask myself those deeper questions about God and source and what does that faith look like now, right? And how do I connect with God? Because I really still had a very, very deep faith that
mhm,
never left. It was just in the context it was shared with me. So I started to realize the more I connected to source, to God, and that was the context I had, the more I felt like myself, the more I felt God in me. And then I remembered being like a child and thinking, this is probably what they actually meant.
mhm,
Now, this is what they shared, which was harmful, but maybe what was actually meant is that, God in us,
mm,
is us in God, is that spiritual divine connection, which means we're already perfect and whole and love. We are already that. And so we're not needing to get better, to be better, to fix.
Mm,
Um, but for so long, I was, like, trying to fix everything, like, "I've just gotta be better, I've gotta show up better, I've gotta
mm,
prove myself," because I innately felt something was wrong, and when I started to really lean into, like, "Oh, like, God in me and God, we're one, like, this is a partnership, we're co-creating,"
mhm,
and I started to feel like, "Oh, I already have everything I need." And I could create from that place. I could be from that place. And I think that's a journey for I think for of all of us in really understanding like what is this co-creative process with spirit, with God, with divine, with source, so that we feel whole, complete in who we are without feeling like there's innately something wrong with me, so now I have to fix it.
mm. So much power. My eyes are teary. I've gone through my own faith deconstruction, which actually Andrea and I haven't had the opportunity to speak about. And how you just described that, I think just saved a whole lot of souls listening. Because many of us were raised in that lens,
Mm,
in our era, in that lens of Christianity. And I love how you describe that. I can still remember part of my journey, and I don't speak out a lot about this, so I'm just well, let's go there. I'm feeling
yeah.
nudged. Um, I can remember sitting in my living room, and I was going through, I think my best way to describe is very tumultuous relationship, and I had 2 littles, and, I made a commitment to get married. I was gonna stick it out. That
Mhm.
was because otherwise, God was probably gonna strike me down with some sort of lightning bolt if I didn't stay
Right.
committed no matter how bad it was. And I actually walked in, our living room, and there was a minister on TV, and he was just in this moment happened to be that's what my practice first husband was watching. And, he actually also he was going through to be a minister at this time.
Mhm.
And so, I always say, like, on Sundays from the pulpit, he had a great message, but as soon as you got in the car on the way home, that wasn't such a great message.
Mhm.
And so he's listening, and this minister is speaking directly to my soul. And he says, "You do not stay inside of a situation that continues to perpetuate and cause you pain. If you have communicated effectively and you have asked for what you need and there is no change, you do not stay in that environment." And that moment, I knew he was speaking to me, and I knew that God was speaking through him, and I knew that I had to make a change.
Mhm.
And so, I think we can create these stories in our heads from how we feel we're being taught or how we were taught that the word you use, deconstruction, is exactly what is required. So, yeah, I was really feeling your journey there. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you for sharing that because I think that's like so important. It's like that you say often, the permission slip, right? Like
Mm,
and it's that moment where you hear something and then you give yourself permission like, "Oh, I can take the necessary step now."
mhm,
And it's probably that innate thing in all of us to say, "Okay, now I'm getting in the driver's seat here
mhm,
and I'm going to do something."
mhm.
And that part of it and it doesn't make it easy.
Mm-mm. It
I'm
was
sure
not
that
easy.
the subsequent, process was not
Mhm,
easy, but it's so meaningful because no matter what that action step is, no matter how you're showing up for your life, it's now, okay, I'm giving myself permission to show up. I'm
mhm,
giving myself permission to allow myself to be seen, to ask for what I want, and then to hold that and say,
mhm,
I'm not taking less.
mhm. And
And
I
yeah.
love how you said too, getting into co-creation then.
Mhm.
Like, actually recognizing that the wholeness comes from you, that it is a partnership, that is a collaboration, it lives within you. And it took me a long time to get there from that moment
Mhm.
because the church actually turned their back on me. And actually
Mhm.
beyond turning their back, they, were pretty nasty.
Yeah, that's hard.
towards me. And
Mhm.
so that was, you have to dig deep in those moments. And I go back and think, wow, did I ever get to meet myself? And for safety and protection at 37 years old, moved back in with my parents
Yeah.
like you.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, cool, it's we also, even though at that time in your life it feels so ridiculous and you feel the failure piece, right? But when you
Mhm.
do look back, you go, wow, actually, that was what was needed so that you could start to reclaim that wholeness and find your light again. So, yeah,
And,
beautiful.
I like that you talked about that. There's a man who, lives down the street, and I remember when I first moved back to, my parents' hometown. It's not where I grew up, but I had moved in to my parents, and he was a minister, and I don't really know him very well, but
Mhm,
he saw me on the street, and he said, I just really feel like the nudge to tell you that God says that this is going to be a hard season, but a good season."
mm.
Now, there was a part of me that was like, "I do not need your prophecies." I reject that.
Right.
Um, there was because I was very angry also, but
Mm,
it's stayed with me for many years, and in a lot of ways because I have seen the goodness
mm,
come through, and I think when we can even see in some of the pain or struggle that we go through, and maybe it didn't turn out like we thought, didn't look like we had hoped and believed it would, and now there's a bit of shame. And how am I going to allow myself to keep moving forward because I'm now carrying this shame that it looks this way?
mhm,
And it's releasing that and allowing ourselves, like, that's going back to the question you asked about, like, the healing. The real healing is, can I let go of the shame I feel around these mistakes or what's happened or how I walked it out, what did or didn't happen?
mhm,
Whether you feel like you were a victim to the situation or you've allowed yourself to take ownership. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I think the whole thing is walking through the healing so that you can have this beautiful co-creative life. And you can start wherever you are. It doesn't matter if you're 50
mhm,
ending up in your parents' basement.
mhm.
Like, trust me when if someone came to me and said that, I'm like, there is no shame because life, it's okay. And if you're on the journey and you're acknowledging you're on the journey and you're like, I am moving towards a more beautiful, fulfilling, healed life, I'm going to be like, let's do this.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I always say to my kids, and I mean it from the bottom of my soul, my parents built a new home in their late 60s, I wanna say,
Mhm.
and at that point in time, all their children were grown, 2 of us in our 40s and, good career, everything good, and they built a home with a basement that is fully finished, with a
Mhm.
kitchen and 3 bedrooms. And I said, "What interesting choice. What's happening for you at this
Mhm.
stage in your life that you're doing that?" And they said, "We always want that our children could come home anytime they need to. Under
Oh.
any circumstance,
Mhm.
we need to know that they can."
Mhm.
And so even, like, their grandchild, for a few summers has lived down in the basement while he's doing hockey schools and stuff, and so it's, maybe not exactly transpired the way they thought, but what a
Yeah.
beautiful thought, and for me, I feel the same way, no matter where we live, that there is an opportunity that if one of our children went through something, no matter what stage, age they're at,
Yeah.
they have a safe place to land to navigate through that.
I
And
love
I
that,
think that
Lori.
that's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that you're saying that because I think that for this generation too, it's different.
it is.
And it's not gonna be, the same as, like, how we grew up, and to have that belief or understanding that mom and dad are always going to welcome me back,
Mhm,
no questions asked,
mhm.
and, life happens, right? Then it's kind of like it gives them the ability to try something,
To feel
to
free.
risk,
Yes.
and not to feel like, "Oh, I just have to do the prescribed thing that everyone says we do,
Mhm.
get go to college, university, then get a master's, then get a job, now stay in it,
Right.
don't ever leave it."
Yes. No matter how miserable you might be.
Right. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that this gives, them permission to try.
Yeah. I love that. So good. Okay, I wanna talk about your podcast, Courage Cast.
Oh, yes.
To inspire others to live boldly. And like, it just popped in my head because everything that you're sharing
Mhm,
is about that, about having the courage no matter what, no matter
mhm.
what, that you have that courage. So I want to learn more about, like, you're cultivating people to have courage even on the hard days.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
When I started the podcast, I really was struggling actually to
Mhm.
think I was brave. I remember, feeling that, and when I was talking to some friends, I was in a mastermind at the time, about what I wanted to talk about, and I said, "I wanna be brave, like, I don't feel brave." I felt like there was a lot of people around me that were doing brave things. And sometimes I see so many other women doing like, taking bigger risks,
Mm.
and I'm like, "Why am I not more brave?" Like, and why am I not taking these courageous steps? And people have pointed out over the years that some of the things that I have done have been very courageous. Doesn't feel like that all the time, but I wanted to share stories of women who live bravely.
Mm.
And that was the premise of why I started the podcast. And we're going to be going on the ninth year, which is absolutely crazy.
It's
It has,
amazing.
yeah,
You
it
were
has definitely.
podcasting before it was cool.
I'm an OG.
You are an OG. Good for
Yeah.
you.
I was doing it when you didn't have another friend who was a podcaster.
So cool. Good for you.
Yeah. So I remember the days of like learning and trying to figure it out because I didn't know anyone who did it. And it has changed. I have grown and evolved obviously over those years, and it has come with me. We've gone on the journey together. And I think that there's something really beautiful about like, I've just literally shared my journey. So as people, if they listened to the podcast and they listened to the beginning episodes versus now, obviously they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like you've just shared the whole journey
Mm,
all the way through." And so that was part of my growth too, has been just continuing to share, not only my story, but the stories of other women and how they are taking brave steps, whether it's, in their life and their business, as performers or artists. I've had incredible people on there. And I've had very ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and so it's just been a really beautiful, I love it. I still to this day, when I get to record a podcast, whether it's by myself or with somebody else, it's always, like, one of my favorite things to do.
oh, it's so fun. What a beautiful way to share your voice
Mhm.
in new ways, being a musician, being able to share it in new ways. And one of the other things I just admire so much is that you really help people with this sense of divine purpose. And, I think purpose is this word that, whoo, there's just been so much energy around this
Mhm.
word. What is divine purpose? How do we know? How do we tap in? Just uncover this one for us.
Ooh, okay, so I love this. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I really do believe we are designed with purpose.
Mm,
There is a purpose inside of every person, and it's not necessarily just to do something.
mm,
It is innately in who you are. Because if you did not have the ability or capacity in which to do the thing that you thought you wanted to do anymore, you would still be purposeful.
mm,
You would be divinely. purposeful, connected to source, to God, and put on the earth for a specific reason and for a specific purpose. A lot of people talk about the lessons that we're here to learn. And I
Mhm.
do believe that we are here to learn lessons, but I
Mhm.
also do believe that we're here to be purposeful. Like
Mhm.
there is a reason for our being here.
Mm.
And so it doesn't matter if there's an individual that does not have the capacity to do things in life and has limitations, or someone who has so much availability to do whatever they want. Everyone has purpose.
Mm.
And it's not in, did I accomplish this? Did I get to this point of achievement? Did I make this much money? Did I have this great of a relationship? It is in who we are and who we are in connection with God, with source, with spirit.
Mm. How do we connect to that, Andrea? How do we tap in to that knowing, the knowingness, but also the messages? How do we tap in?
I think the more that we just are able to sit with who we are and become aware and just really even self-aware and asking, I'm available to hear. I'm available to experience. I'm available for what you have. Show me. And I've often talked to women about, they say I don't hear God, or I don't know what my intuition sounds like, or I don't, we've talked about this, signs, like I don't get signs, or, things happen. And I think that when we are become more aware of of just being like available,
Mhm.
all it is being available. There's no like special sauce. Nobody can have it more than anybody else. We all have the capacity to hear from God, from source, from spirit, and from the universe, from nature. It shows up in so many ways that when we're open to and asking, it's
Mhm.
going to show up.
Mhm. Which requires a pause.
Absolutely.
Because I think so much of, I can't hear my intuition. I'm not hearing source. I don't get messages from the universe. I think I would say, are you slowing down long enough to actually take
Right.
anything, or are you constantly scrolling on some device that keeps you from having those quiet moments? So I think I was saying to Andrea, for me, it always is in nature,
Mhm.
and probably the reason why is because that's when I'm slowing down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking about this, and I didn't get a chance to share this with you, but you're saying that you often see hawks and eagles.
Fuck. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, last year I kept seeing bears.
Ooh, oh, okay. That's a big animal.
Yeah. And it
That's a
was
big
really
sign.
it was really interesting. Well, yeah, and I didn't love it because I would be in the bush when I would see them.
Wow.
And I remember one of the first times, and I started to really look into like what is the symbol, is like the
Yes.
symbol basically of a bear. And I mean, like you would not be surprised. It's courage,
Oh.
it's bravery. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, well, what do I need to have courage for? Like,
Mm,
and it was interesting. It was like the next step. And so it became a really interesting thing because it was a summer for me last year, especially when I kept seeing them.
mm.
Sometimes I was in the car, sometimes I was on the trail, sometimes I was with the dog, and I was just like, "Oh, I think I'm being called to take another step." And so I've actually asked God this time. I was like, "Can we find a new sign this summer?"
Yep, can we not
I
have
was like,
the
"Is there
bear?
something else we could do?" Because I think I'm
Oh,
over that one.
watch, you're gonna see the bear. I'm gonna get a text this weekend. Guess what I saw in the woods?
I know.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a big awakening one for sure.
yeah.
So, I'm gonna send you an eagle. Let's
Yes.
see an eagle this weekend because, they're not gonna carry us away.
No.
Oh,
No.
too funny. So as you're talking about all of that, and I mean, I think the signs are one of the other things is, the cool topic today is manifestation.
Mhm.
And I even sometimes am like, okay, what does that really mean? And how do I get there? So what is your relationship with manifestation and what are some ways you ground into that divine connection so that you manifest what you desire?
Well, it's interesting because when I was growing up, like, manifestation was, like, a word you did not use.
No.
And, in fact, a lot of the things that I say or do now were things that I were very taboo. But
Mhm.
I've had to really, like, have, like, that come to Jesus moment when it comes to manifestation, literally.
I love it.
Because it's one of those things where I'm like, "Okay, well, what does this mean?" Like, I grew up with one context, and now I'm experiencing another one, and, how do we have, manifestation? Like, what does that look like in our lives? I'm sorry, someone just rang the doorbell.
Well, that's funny. As you said the word manifestation, I looked down at my clock and it said 11:11, and I just thought that was wild. Do you need to get your doorbell?
No, it's
Okay,
okay.
okay.
So there was this moment when I started to realize that it was really all about, like, coming into relationship with source, with God to co-create.
Mhm.
And that it really is what we focus on and allowing ourselves to start to focus on what it is that we desire.
Mm,
So I had said, at the beginning of the podcast, about how I had really always been in this fear place, right? Like
mm,
I was so fearful that I wasn't going to have what I wanted. And the more fear I was in, the more I was calling it in and the more things would happen. And I was started to realize that manifestation was just really, you know, our beliefs around what we believe to be true and what we are calling in our lives. And so for me, it was understanding, oh, if I shift that and I start to believe for what it is that I desire and hold the belief for it, I can manifest something different.
mm.
I realized I was a extremely powerful manifester because I had manifested a lot of terrible things
Right.
into my life. And so realizing that I could now shift that and I could ask God, I'm like, well, what is possible? Like, how can we co create something that is beautiful and lovely and life giving? And I've just started to see that more and more and more. And I've started to really like become more aligned with those desires and moving towards that than um, being in fear or doubt of, like, what could possibly happen.
That's so beautiful. It makes me think of a lot of the listeners of this podcast are high achieving women
Mhm,
who feel like they've done everything right and still feel disconnected. And that deep sense of being out of alignment and how you described that is it just made me think it's alignment. It's back
mhm.
into alignment with self and then yeah. So what would you say to to the women that are just like, I what's it all for? I've done everything. What is one piece of Andrea advice you'd like to leave them with?
Well, I think I would say is that you don't have to be perfect.
Mm,
It's okay just to be who you are, and you always have a starting point,
mhm,
and it's okay to be there and allow yourself to be.
mhm,
What you might be feeling today is not necessarily where you're going to end up, but you have an option to choose to be in alignment with what it is that you want and desire.
mhm,
You get to make that choice. No one's gonna make it for you.
mhm,
You get to make it. So that's what I would say to someone is that they everyone has the opportunity, no matter what, to choose differently.
Mm. Every moment of every day.
Yeah.
So profound. Okay, my last question for you, my dear. Ambitious, awakened, and aligned. What does that mean to you?
Mm, and I do love the name of your podcast. I love that you have that. Um, I think what it means to me is going to this place of the when I am awakened and I become aligned with spirit, I can achieve, I can have and co-create the things that would light me up. And that would be where the ambition is. And so for me, it's really about like awakening my soul, aligning to spirit, to God, and then really moving towards the dreams, taking those brave steps.
Mm, I think a beautiful example of everything we've talked about today is the fact that Andrea and I were brought back together. So we actually knew
Yes.
each other much earlier in life through family
Yeah,
circumstances. And then it's been 30 years,
I
30
know.
years. And we end up in the same room on the same day, in the same vibrational frequency, and I am so beyond grateful that our worlds have been brought back together.
Me too. Me too. It really is, speaking of divine, totally divine.
Totally divine.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling we'll have many more of these conversations, so thank
Yes.
you for being here today and for sharing all of your beauty and your insights. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, what a soul stirring conversation. Andrea reminded us that it's never too late to rediscover who you really are, and that failure, rejection, and loss aren't detours, they're divine invitations. If this episode spoke to your heart, be sure to connect with Andrea at andreacrisp.ca and follow her on Instagram at Andrea Crisp Coach. And if you're craving more conversations like this about bold leadership, awakening your purpose, and living in full alignment, make sure you're subscribed to Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned. Until next time, keep rising, keep aligning, and keep showing the F up for your life you're meant to lead.